Welcome to Guys, a video series talking about different types of baseball guys. In this episode, we're talking about loose cannons. These guys are renegades who play by their own rules. Think Harry Callahan, John McClane, McBain, or McBain. Now, there's a fine line between a loose cannon and an asshole, so there may be some overlap here.
You don't give a shit who's in your way, do you?
Not really.
And you could also fit many of these guys into the categories of hotheads, firebrands, rabble-rousers, or wild cards.
Wild card, bitches! Yeah! What?
Main thing here is that these guys may have questionable methods, but they get the job done. Catcher, Darren Daulton. Darren Daulton starts us off with a bit of a Special Agent Dale Cooper vibe.
I also awoke from the same dream realizing that I had subconsciously gained knowledge of a deductive technique involving mind-body coordination operating hand in hand with the deepest level of intuition.
Daulton embraced metaphysics and numerology, the Mayan calendar, December 21st, 2012 being the end of the world. I wonder what kind of numerology insight Daulton could have brought if he'd played in today's more analytics-influenced environment. In the earlier part of his career, Daulton struggled with more conventional loose cannon type vices like alcohol and had been arrested for drunk driving multiple times. But he was able to change his ways by discovering the power of numbers. Daulton said in a 2006 interview with Sports Illustrated that after he got clean, his wife Nicole believed him to still be drinking or on drugs, and that's why he was into all this new agey stuff. But I don't take drugs, and I'm not a drunk, he said. Nicole just doesn't understand metaphysics. Women be shopping and not understanding metaphysics. Am I right, fellas? First base, George Brett. Obviously, George is known more as a third baseman, but he did shift to first in the late 80s and 90s. George was a loose cannon with a
Pretty loose butthole. It was the loosest butthole.
I shit my pants last night. I did.
Yeah. George kind of rewrote the baseball truism that sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes it rains. For George, it was sometimes you get 3 hits, sometimes you get tossed for fighting, and sometimes your butt is too messed up to play. He famously had problems with hemorrhoids early in his career, and then in his retirement, we all found out about his pants shitting issues.
I'm good twice a year for that.
I still find it to be a minor miracle that this video even exists. Easily my favorite video on YouTube.
True story.
But George also was definitely a loose cannon as a player with a fiery, competitive spirit. His slide attack on Greg Nettles in the 1977 ALCS led to an epic brawl. And of course, there's the Pine Tar incident. This is the maddest anyone has ever been on a baseball field.
This is the maddest I've ever been!
And it's fitting that the person who brought this rage out of George is another loose cannon, our second baseman, Billy Martin. Okay, there is serious asshole DNA in the Billy Martin genome. A spark plug who never shied away from a fistfight or a drink. Martin took the hard-drinking, old-school ballplayer stereotype and lived it full tilt all the way to its tragic end. If I were to compare Billy to a loose cannon detective, it would have to be Big Nick from Den of Thieves, despite Billy's small stature. You know Billy was chugging that Pepto in the clubhouse every day. Third base, A-Rod. I definitely classify A-Rod as a loose cannon. He was a tremendous player, but he was also really easy to hate. But you gotta hand it to him, he would do anything to gain an advantage in a game, including slapping the ball out of an opposing player's glove or shouting, "I got it," to distract opposing infielders as he was rounding the bases on a pop-up. And he's also allegedly got a portrait on his wall of himself as a centaur. This is loose cannon behavior. Shortstop, Rogers Hornsby. Hornsby was more of a second baseman, but he did play shortstop at the start of his career. Hornsby might have been the A-Rod of his time, I think. He was widely disliked by teammates, opponents, and management, but he was incredibly talented. Oh, whoops, that's a different Hornsby people hate.
That's just the way it is.
But then, Hornsby became a manager, something that A-Rod has had the sense to avoid. Hornsby suffered from a complete absence of tact, which is not a great quality for a manager. In 1927, when Hornsby was with the Giants, he was having dinner with the team's young shortstop, Eddie Farrell, when a sports writer walked up and asked Hornsby if he thought the Giants had a shot at the pennant. Not with Farrell playing shortstop, he said without hesitation. This was not an isolated incident. Hornsby made it a practice to alienate his players. He despised pitchers and would make pitching changes from the dugout so he didn't have to be near them. He basically wouldn't talk to a player except to heap ridicule on them. As you can imagine, his players generally hated playing for him, and his teams didn't do very well, but he amazingly kept getting managerial opportunities. But he didn't last long anywhere, as he always got on the wrong side of ownership too. Cardinals owner Sam Breeden said that listening to Hornsby was like having the contents of a rock crusher emptied over your head. Left field, Ricky Henderson. Henderson had the heightened self-opinion of a true loose cannon.
He said he'd kill us both.
He might kill you, but there's no fucking way he's ever killing me. Fucking asshole, he said that?
Ricky was the best, but Ricky always made sure to tell you that Ricky was the best. And usually in the third person.
So I said, what's up, Rick? He goes, 60 stolen bases? You ought to be ashamed. Ricky has 60 at the break. Click.
Really weird how often Billy Martin features in this list, and I had forgotten that, of course, Ricky had played for Billy in Oakland and in New York.
Billy Martin was a great manager. He was a great friend to me. I love you, Billy. I wish he was here.
Game recognized game. Right field, Reggie Jackson. And here's another one. Billy played the angry LT to Reggie's celebrity detective. Reggie had a true loose cannon mentality, whether he was getting into a fight with Billy, plowing through Yankees fans after winning the World Series, or talking about himself as the straw that stirs the drink, or assassinating the Queen of England. Center field, Mickey Mantle. Thinking about Mickey Mantle always makes me sad. As great as he was, there's a sense that he could have been the best to ever play the game had he taken better care of his health.
You talk about a role model. This is a role model. Don't be like me. You know, I was given so much of blood.
Still, it's amazing that he was as good as he was, knowing that he was probably playing horribly hungover much of the time. The stories of Mantle's drinking exploits, which usually also involved, of course, Billy Martin, are sad and sometimes funny at the same time. My favorite is the one where a fan spotted Mantle at lunch and ordered the most expensive glass of port to be taken over to him after his meal. Mickey immediately dumped it into his glass of vodka. The fan, shocked, rushed over to tell Mickey what an incredibly high-quality port that was. Mickey shrugged and said, "We do this all the time, Absolute vodka and port. We call it an abort." Post-retirement, with no long baseball season to keep him tethered to some routine, Mickey went into a full-on alcoholic descent, moving beyond loose cannon status into unhinged cannon.
I don't give a shit about the hair. Let's get this over with, all right?
Mickey would drink all day, losing track of where he was and what day it was. He didn't remember being best man at Billy Martin's wedding. He supposedly signed an autographed ball for a kid by writing, "You're lucky, your mom's got nice tits, Mickey Mantle." Jesus. Mickey would die of liver cancer, and all 4 of his sons spent time at the Betty Ford Clinic, one of them also dying of liver cancer at age 47. Okay, like I said, it gets sad when you think about Mickey.
I love you, Mickey, I love you.
DH, Hal McRae. Hal McRae was at his loosest on the base paths, and he had a very loose interpretation of what the base path even was. Needless to say, these would be illegal slides today.
Well, then the law is crazy.
But also, as a manager, Hal let loose on occasion.
You think I'm a goddamn fool? I'm tired of all these ass questions every night.
Pitching staff, Roger Clemens. We've got a pretty good ace here with Roger Clemens, who was a guy who was never afraid to throw at a batter, but would also get creative with it. Why not a sawed-off bat barrel? Why not? Sort of like throwing the gun when you run out of bullets. Pedro Martinez, another guy who loved to throw at people. Pedro did not care that he was basically the skinniest guy on any MLB roster. He would throw at you. And if you threw at him, he would charge the mound. Full-on loose cannon behavior. Rube Waddell. Okay, this is the loosest of all loose cannons. There is none more loosed. Where do you even start with this guy? I guess first off, he was an amazing pitcher, elite at missing bats. His strikeout record of 349 stood for over 60 years until Sandy Koufax broke it. So that's cool, but let's get to the weird stuff. Waddell, deep into alcoholism, had a tumultuous marriage to his second wife. When they divorced, Waddell took out an ad in the Scranton Republican newspaper to sell himself as a husband. He sought a wife who was unkissed and unhugged. This was basically the first ever online dating profile. And Waddell absolutely killed it. Listen to this. Relict of a grass widow, habits, periodical water drinker, fond of fires, skirts, and domestic excitement. Take notes, modern fellas. Rube basically laid it all out back in 1908. Physique, splendid, girls splendid. Has a bear hug, which will make any woman happy. When not under the influence of sinister forces, is docile and affectionate. When not under the influence of sinister forces is a pretty huge qualifier. Qualifications? Peroxide blondes preferred. Okay. Gentlemen prefer fake blondes, I guess. Only the unkissed and the unhugged need apply. Rube positively objects to girls who have spooned with other fellows. Age? Somewhere from 14 to 40. Oh boy, Rube. Yeah, never mind what I was saying before. Don't use this as a roadmap for your online dating profile. Color? White, brown, or yellow.
Racially, he's pretty cool.
Widows? In order for widows to win the favor of Rube, they must furnish proof to the effect that their husbands were hung. Say what now, Rube? But he does expand on this. Grass and sod widows, what the fuck, have too much of a habit of bragging about the virtues of their former husbands. I am always saying this. Let 'em show me their former lorded masters were hung to a sour apple tree, and I will take 'em under consideration. Remarks, maids with wooden legs will be frozen out. Rats in the hair, like rats in the belfry, are not desirable. Wait, isn't it bats in the belfry? I mean, rats too. I mean, I don't think it's good for any animals to be in the belfry. I think it goes on like this for a while, so we can stop there. So eventually, Rube, in a perpetual drunken stupor, would lose track of how many women he was married to. So I guess that ad worked pretty well and brought him plenty of his desired domestic excitement. In case you hadn't already come to this conclusion, something was not right in the head of Rube Waddell. He had a lifelong fascination with trucks and would run off the field to chase them during games. In off-seasons, he wrestled alligators in the circus. He would be easily distracted by opposing fans who would bring puppies and shiny objects to games, which would draw Waddell off the field to play with or stare at said objects. He also had a drinking problem, as mentioned, leading to the Sporting News to dub him a southpaw. Insensitive, but also awesome. Throughout all this, by the way, Waddell was freaking awesome on the mound. Like the best pitcher in baseball, basically. Loose cannon. He was so good that he would on occasion ask his outfielders to sit down and proceed to strike out the side. In addition to all this erratic behavior, Waddell also showed great heroism in his lifetime, including saving the town of Hickman, Kentucky from a devastating flood in 1912, working in icy water for hours, which led to pneumonia and then tuberculosis and ultimately his death at age 38. Mark Fidrich. The bird gives us another Agent Dale Cooper type. Fidrich seems like the sort of guy who would get visits from a mysterious giant before a big start. Between manicuring the mound, talking to the ball, and throwing back balls that had hits in them, the bird was one of the most superstitious pitchers in baseball lore. Phenomenal Smith. This guy gave himself the nickname Phenomenal, which tells you a lot about the guy. We talked about Rickey Henderson as an arrogant sort of player, but this guy took it to another level. Rickey called himself the greatest of all time in front of the guy whose record he had just broken. It was far from humble, but it was true. Rickey was the greatest of all time, objectively. Phenomenal Smith was pretty far from phenomenal, although he had some okay years. When he was called up by Brooklyn in 1885, he made the bold claim that he didn't need much of a team behind him to win games. Well, his new teammates didn't take too kindly to that attitude and proceeded to lay down behind him, committing 14 errors. Smith gave up 18 runs, 11 earned, and never again pitched for Brooklyn. So that's 5 starters, but when you're dealing with loose cannons, it doesn't hurt to have some backup options, so let's add one more. Miles Michaelis. This guy has been a really solid pitcher for the Cardinals since 2018 after a stint in Japan. Why is he a loose cannon? Well, really just because of one decidedly wacko anecdote where Michaelis lost a bet and ate a live lizard. And it sounds like the guy filming this was the giggler from Death Wish 3.
They killed the giggler, man. They killed the giggler!
They had no business doing that. None.
Bullpen. This is really the ultimate stomping ground for loose cannons. There are probably dozens of great options to fill the pen, but here's a few choices. Al Raboski, the Mad Hungarian. I mean, don't really gotta say much more, just look at this guy.
You're somebody, I tell him what to say. That's part of the business.
He demanded a trade when Cardinals manager Vern Rapp tried to yankify the Cardinals and demand players shave their facial hair. I feel like the spiritual successor to Raboski was Brian Wilson, the Beard. I almost wonder if it wasn't either of those guys that did all that great relief pitching, but was in fact the Beard.
The Beard stay.
Can't breathe. Can't breathe.
Wilson had some great moments as the Giants closer from 2010 to 2012.
I feel like I want to rage right now.
Just the jet black dyed beard on its own was a bizarre quirk, but when he started trolling the media with his stories of the machine, he took it to another level of loose cannonness.
Well, I think the machine will say all he needs to say when he makes an appearance again.
Rob Dibble. Dibble was an amazingly good reliever for the Reds, and he challenges Roger Clemens for most rageful pitching moment.
First day back from the suspension, and this happens. Dibble is gone, and Jack Armstrong comes on from the bullpen.
Goose Gossage. This bullpen is going to be really good, and blessed with impressive facial hair. Goose was wise to move away from this look he had at the start of his career. Goose Gossage, amazingly, had an 8.2 WAR season out of the pen. That's freaking insane. It was 142 innings, very old school, but still. 8.2 is an incredible season for a starter, but for a reliever? However, I can guarantee you that if Goose saw this video, he would not take the compliment. Goose is hilariously over the top in his disgust for new school analytics like WAR, and I can understand it. Hey man, I'm old too, so I get it.
The real beauty of the game is gone. There's no strategy today. Nobody even knows how to bunt.
Everything has sucked lately.
Rick Ankiel. Okay, Ankiel is going to give me the Shohei Ohtani of loose cannons, a two-way player, but not at the same time. Ankiel had what could be considered a loose cannon attached to his left shoulder that carried him to an amazing rookie season as a starter in 2000 before he came down with perhaps the most infamous case of the yips in the playoffs that season. But in true loose cannon style, Ankiel zigged, giving up on his pitching career and reinventing himself as an outfielder. After 3 years in the minors, Ankiel resurfaced, making a surprising Roy Hobbesian comeback. The rest of the bench. Jimmy Pearsall, outfield. Jimmy Pearsall was famous for his struggles with bipolar disorder, as depicted in his autobiography, Fear Strikes Out, which was adapted into a movie without a lot of subtlety.
That was ridiculous. It really made me look weird.
Pearsall did do some wacky stuff on the field, but it was likely more to do with showmanship than his illness. He would imitate opposing players, run around in circles between pitches, and just do a lot of general clowning around. Eventually, this led to a number of fights with opposing players, including a famous one with who else? Billy Martin. Jesus Christ, you just can't avoid this guy. Pearsall would suffer a breakdown in his second season in 1952, which led him to be institutionalized, undergoing electroshock therapy, and then being prescribed lithium. He made a triumphant return in 53 and had a 17-year career as one of the best defensive center fielders in the game. And he continued his antics throughout, including in 1963 when he hit his 100th career home run and proceeded to run backwards around the bases. Backup catcher A.J. Pierzynski. Ozzie Guillen said of Pierzynski that if you play against him, you hate him. If you play with him, you hate him a little bit less. Yeah, just look at this dude.
Spiked up blonde hair, little bitty jeans, chicken spaghetti and ciccolinis.
And speaking of Ozzie Guillen, we better go ahead and hire him as our manager.
Tell me about when you were being interviewed for the potential White Sox manager's job.
I was drunk.
You were drunk?
Yes.
Yes, I was drunk.
Why come to the meeting for such an important
Because I didn't really
interview
care.
drunk?
That's the kind of energy we need to lead this team. Oh, and I just discovered that AJ Pierzynski was actually considered for the 2025 White Sox managerial job.
People can change.
Do you consider AJ Pierzynski a serious candidate to manage the White Sox in 2025?
Oh my God. Oh, don't make me kill myself. Is AJ managed the White Sox before me? I burned the ballpark.
Outfield, Manny Ramirez. How do you not have Manny on here? He's got his own catchphrase that summed up his loose cannon philosophy, which was already fully formed by the time he broke into the bigs, when he hit a ground rule double for his first big league hit, but thought it was a home run. I'd say the ultimate Manny being Manny moment is when he made this catch, and then went up to high-five a fan in the stands, but still managed to get the ball back into the infield in time to double the runner off of first. Lonnie Smith. Lonnie being Lonnie would have made a lot of sense for Smith, who had the same kinds of scatterbrained and clumsy mistakes in the field. But unfortunately for Lonnie, one of his most scatterbrained mistakes likely cost the Atlanta Braves a World Series in 1991. So the lighthearted nature of that phrase would never have stuck. Lonnie also famously bought a gun to shoot Kansas City Royals GM John Schuerholz, blaming Schuerholz for Smith being pushed out of the league in 1988. There was, in fact, collusion by teams to lower player salaries at the time, so this wasn't completely paranoid behavior. Lonnie aborted his plan, though, when he went to fire a practice shot in his backyard, and, having never fired a gun before, was holding it wrong and injured his hand. Lonnie being Lonnie. Outfield, Lenny Dykstra. Gotta have Nails on here, a guy who allegedly hired a private detective to dig up dirt on umpires to blackmail them into a beneficial strike zone.
Wasn't a coincidence you think that I led the league in walks the next few years, was it?
Lenny continued with his loose attitude into his retirement, where he faced charges for grand theft auto, bankruptcy fraud, and indecent exposure. And there's a lot that's indecent about this tweet addressed to Lauren Boebert. But yeah, those two probably have a lot in common, actually. I guess you could compare Lenny to Harvey Keitel in Bad Lieutenant.
I did so many bad things!
Shortstop, Leo Durocher. Okay, we've got a lot of outfielders here, so we need somebody to back up the infield, so let's go with the lip. Durocher broke into the bigs in a big way, coming up with the 1928 Yankees and immediately making enemies out of Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth simply by being annoying. Durocher was known for his nonstop chattering, his fights with opponents, teammates, and fans, and for coining the phrase, "nice guys finish last." And Durocher was fired from his managerial job with the Dodgers because of a boycott by the Catholic Youth Organization, who claimed that Durocher was, quote, undermining the moral training of Brooklyn's Roman Catholic youth, like a true loose cannon. He would eventually get his managerial job back with the Dodgers, but only on television.
Sandy, nice and easy, huh, buddy?
You know, that's the smartest horse I ever saw.
He's not so smart. He forgot to touch second base.
Also, as manager of the Giants in 1951, Durocher rigged up a telescope and bell system in the Polo Grounds 500 feet from home plate to steal signs, which he used to tip Bobby Thompson that Ralph Branca was about to throw a fastball. So, there you go. That rounds out our team of loose cannons, which might be a good team on paper, but in reality, they'd probably tear each other apart.
You got